Whisper Diaries, where we share life's funny moments in soothing whispers. I'm your host, Natalie, and today we're diving into the world of first date disasters. Get comfortable, maybe dim the lights, and let me take you through some hilariously awkward dating moments that I hope will make you both laugh and relax. Our first story tonight is called The Spaghetti Incident. Picture this. I was 26 and had been messaging this incredibly charming guy named Mike on a dating app for about 2 weeks. His profile was perfect. He loved hiking, had a good job in marketing, and most importantly, he had a dog. We decided to meet at this upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I spent hours getting ready, choosing the perfect outfit, a new black dress that was just the right balance of classy and interesting. I wanted to make a good impression. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early, found our table, and sat down to wait. Mike arrived right on time, and I was immediately relieved to see he looked just like his photos. Tall, with a warm smile and kind eyes. The conversation flowed naturally at first. We ordered wine, shared stories about our jobs, and discovered we both had a weird obsession with 90s cartoon shows. Everything was going perfectly until our main courses arrived. I had ordered spaghetti, which in retrospect was my first mistake. Never order spaghetti on a first date, my friends. Never. As I twirled a forkful of pasta, laughing at something he said, I somehow managed to flick the sauce-covered noodles directly onto my face, down my new dress, and somehow, and I still don't understand the physics of this, a single strand landed in my hair and another on his white shirt. There was a moment of horrified silence before Mike burst out laughing. I tried to laugh it off too, reaching for my water to take a sip and calm down, only to knock the entire glass over, directly into his lap. Within 30 seconds, I had managed to cover both of us in spaghetti sauce and water. Mike looked like he had some kind of strange food-based injury. The waiter rushed over with napkins, and as I stood up to help clean the mess, I knocked over the bread basket, sending garlic bread flying across the restaurant floor. By this point, I was beyond mortified. Mike, however, was still laughing. Not a polite, forced laugh, but genuine tears in his eyes laughter. This is officially the most memorable first date I've ever had, he said, using his napkin to dab sauce from his shirt. I was convinced the date was ruined, but he insisted we stay. We spent the rest of the evening with sauce-stained clothes, laughing about it. And you know what? We dated for 6 months after that. It didn't work out in the end, but not because of the spaghetti incident. Sometimes disaster can be the beginning of something special. Our next story is called The X Encounter. This happened to my friend Sarah, who gave me permission to share it with you all. Sarah had been single for about a year after ending a long-term relationship. She finally felt ready to date again and matched with a guy named Jason on a dating app. They decided to meet at a small, intimate jazz bar that had just opened downtown. Sarah arrived early, found a cozy corner table, and waited. As she sat there, she noticed a familiar face at the bar. Her ex-boyfriend, the one she'd been with for 4 years. He hadn't seen her yet, and Sarah briefly considered leaving, but before she could, Jason arrived. Jason was charming and attentive. The conversation was flowing, and Sarah was starting to relax, almost forgetting her ex was just 20 feet away. That is, until she saw her ex stand up from his bar stool and walk directly toward their table. Sarah froze mid-sentence. "Sarah, is that you?" her ex asked, his words slightly slurred. "Fancy seeing you here." Jason looked confused as Sarah reluctantly made introductions. "Jason, this is, Tom, this is Jason." "Nice to meet you, man," Jason said politely, extending his hand. Tom ignored the outstretched hand. "So this is the guy, huh?" he said, swaying slightly. "Your replacement." Sarah's face turned crimson. "Tom, we've been broken up for a year. Please go back to your drink." But Tom was on a roll. He pulled up a chair and sat down, uninvited. "You know," he said to Jason, "she snores like a chainsaw. It's cute at first, but trust me, after 4 years, you'll need earplugs." Jason looked at Sarah with raised eyebrows. She wanted to disappear into the floor. "And she's super picky about food," Tom continued. "Can't have different foods touching on the plate. Has to eat all of one thing before moving to the next." "Tom," Sarah hissed. "Stop it." "What?" Tom said innocently. "I'm just giving the guy some tips." "Oh, and she talks in her sleep. Sometimes full conversations. Once she recited an entire grocery list at 3 a.m. Jason, to his credit, started laughing. "Really? That's actually kind of adorable." Tom seemed disappointed that his revelations weren't having the desired effect. He stood up, somewhat unsteadily. "Well, you kids have fun. Sarah, nice to see you again." After Tom wandered back to the bar, Sarah buried her face in her hands. "I am so sorry about that." To her surprise, Jason was still smiling. "Don't worry about it. We all have exes. And for what it's worth, I don't mind snoring. I don't care if you're picky with food. And sleep-talking grocery lists sounds entertaining." What could have been a date-ruining disaster turned into a bonding moment. Sarah and Jason ended up dating for almost a year after that. Sometimes the most embarrassing moments lead to the best connections. Before I share the next story, I want to take a moment to thank you for listening to ASMR Chuckles. If you're enjoying these whispered tales of dating disasters, please consider liking this episode and leaving a comment about what you think. I'd also love to hear your ideas for future episodes. Maybe you have some dating disasters of your own you'd like me to share. Or perhaps there's another topic altogether you'd like me to explore in this relaxing, whispery format. Your support and feedback help me create content that you'll love to listen to. Now, let's continue with our next dating disaster story. Our third story is titled The Allergic Reaction. This one comes from my college friend Alex, who had what might be the most physically uncomfortable first date in history. Alex had been crushing on this woman named Mia from his economics class for an entire semester. She was brilliant, beautiful, and had this infectious laugh that made everyone around her smile. When the semester was ending, Alex finally worked up the courage to ask her out, and to his delight, she said yes. For their first date, Alex wanted to impress Mia, so he made reservations at a new fusion restaurant that had amazing reviews. What Alex forgot, or perhaps temporarily blocked from his memory due to nerves, was that he had a severe shellfish allergy. Not the kind that's just uncomfortable, but the kind that requires an EpiPen and possibly a hospital visit. The date started perfectly. They were seated at a romantic corner table with soft lighting. Mia looked stunning, and the conversation flowed easily as they discussed everything from their career aspirations to their shared love of obscure indie films. When it came time to order, Mia mentioned that the seafood platter to share was supposedly the restaurant's specialty. Not wanting to seem difficult or mention his allergy, for reasons he still can't explain to this day, Alex agreed enthusiastically. "I love seafood," he lied, immediately questioning his own sanity, even as the words left his mouth. The platter arrived, a magnificent display of various seafood, including several shellfish items that were essentially poison to Alex. He strategically navigated the platter, avoiding the deadly items and eating only the safe fish. Mia noticed his selectiveness. "You're not trying the scallops. They're my favorite," she said, spearing one with her fork and offering it to him. This was Alex's moment to come clean, to laugh it off and explain his allergy. Instead, he thought, maybe if I just have one tiny bite, it won't be so bad. Alex accepted the scallop, chewed, swallowed, and smiled. Mia beamed back at him. 10 minutes later, his throat began to itch. 5 minutes after that, his face started to swell. "Are you okay?" Mia asked, looking concerned. "Your face looks different." "I'm fine," Alex wheezed, his voice becoming strained. "Just a little hot in here." Another 5 minutes passed, and Alex could no longer deny the obvious. His face was swelling dramatically. He was having trouble breathing, and he finally had to confess. "I'm allergic to shellfish," he admitted, his voice barely audible as he reached for his EpiPen in his jacket pocket. Mia's eyes widened in horror. "What? Then why did you eat the scallop I gave you?" "Because you're really pretty," Alex replied, weakly, before jabbing the EpiPen into his thigh. What followed was not the romantic end to a first date that Alex had imagined. Instead of a goodnight kiss, Mia drove him to the emergency room, where he spent the next several hours being monitored by medical professionals while Mia sat beside him, alternating between concern and bewilderment at his decision-making. The silver lining, Mia was impressed by what she called his misguided but oddly sweet gesture. They ended up dating for over a year, though she never let him live down the fact that he nearly died trying to impress her on their first date, and needless to say, they never went to a seafood restaurant again. Our final story tonight is the mistaken identity. This happened to my friend Jordan just last year, and it's a perfect example of how technology can create entirely new categories of dating disasters. Jordan had been talking to someone named Taylor on a dating app. For about a week, they had great conversation chemistry, shared similar tastes in music and books, and finally decided to meet in person at a popular coffee shop downtown. Jordan arrived early, got a table, and waited. About 5 minutes before their scheduled meeting time, a person walked in who matched Taylor's profile pictures. Jordan waved, person smiled and walked over, and they began their date. The conversation was a bit different from their messages. Topics that had flowed easily online seemed awkward in person, and Jordan noticed that Taylor didn't seem to remember some details from their previous conversations. Still, first dates can be awkward, so Jordan chalked it up to nerves. About 20 minutes into the date, Jordan made a reference to a band they had both mentioned loving in their messages. Taylor looked confused. "I don't think I've ever heard of them," Taylor said. Jordan laughed, but we spent like an hour messaging about their latest album. Taylor's confusion deepened. "I'm sorry, but I don't think we messaged about any bands." At that exact moment, the door to the coffee shop opened, and another person walked in who looked remarkably similar to the Taylor sitting across from Jordan. This new person looked around the coffee shop, clearly searching for someone. A horrifying realization dawned on Jordan. Turning back to the person across the table, Jordan asked tentatively, "Your name is Taylor, right?" The person smiled. "No, I'm Alex. I'm meeting someone named Jamie." They looked at their phone. "Oh no, I think I'm at the wrong table. The person I'm supposed to meet just texted asking where I am." As Alex excused themselves and moved to another table, the real Taylor approached Jordan's table, looking slightly amused. "Let me guess," Taylor said, sitting down. "You thought that person was me and started the date already?" Jordan, mortified, nodded. "We've been talking for almost 20 minutes. I told them about my childhood pet and my embarrassing high school band phase." Taylor laughed. "Well, at least you've had some practice now. Want to start over?" Jordan and Taylor ended up having a great date once they were actually talking to each other. The real conversation flowed naturally, and they shared several laughs about the mix-up. Jordan learned that the coffee shop had double-booked several blind dates that day due to a scheduling error, creating multiple cases of mistaken identity throughout the afternoon. "So let me get this straight," Taylor said, stirring a latte. "You spent 20 minutes telling a complete stranger about your life, including your childhood obsession with the collecting vintage action figures." Jordan nodded, still embarrassed. "And I told them about the time I accidentally called my high school teacher Mom in front of the entire class." "Well, at least someone named Alex now knows all your deepest secrets," Taylor laughed. "Think of it as practice, and for what it's worth, I find your honesty refreshing." The mix-up actually became an excellent icebreaker. Taylor admitted that blind dates usually made them nervous, but seeing Jordan handle the awkward situation with humor helped put them at ease. They ended up talking for hours, long after their coffee had gone cold. What makes this story particularly amusing is the aftermath. 3 months into dating exclusively, Jordan and Taylor ran into Alex again at a concert. Alex was there with Jamie, the person they were actually supposed to meet that day at the coffee shop. The four of them ended up becoming friends, occasionally getting together for double dates where they'd retell the story of their unusual first meetings to mutual friends. "I think the universe has a strange sense of humor sometimes," Jordan told me when sharing this story. "I was so mortified in the moment, but looking back, that mix-up was the perfect way to start our relationship. It stripped away all the first date pretenses After accidentally bearing your soul to a stranger, there's really nothing left to hide. Now, as I whisper these tales of dating disasters in your ear, I hope they've brought both amusement and relaxation. These stories remind us that perfection is overrated, and often it's the mishaps that make the best memories and the strongest connections. Before we wrap up tonight's episode of ASMR Chuckles, I want to sincerely thank you for spending this time with me. If you've enjoyed these whispered tales of dating disasters, please consider liking this episode and leaving a comment sharing your thoughts. I'd be especially delighted to hear about your own dating misadventures or suggestions for future episode topics. Your support through engagement helps this podcast grow and allows me to continue creating content specifically designed for your enjoyment and relaxation. In our next episode, we'll be exploring different territory with new stories to both amuse and soothe you.